Bob Holt's neck of the woods has been Arkansas Razorback athletics for going on close to 40 years now, if not right at 40 years. But I'm right now up in what used to be, I guess, close enough to his neck of the woods that we could call it that because he is a Michigan native. But I know you've identified as an Arkansan for a little bit longer, though, Bob. But I guess, am I kind of close to any part where you grew up here in Saugatuck?
You're on the other side of the state, I believe. I grew up in Saginaw, which is on the eastern side, kind of near Detroit, and you're on the other side, I believe. But yeah, I grew up close to Bay City, Michigan. So yeah, Michigan summers. I mean, the winters are pretty tough, but the summers are the best. You know, nice, cool days, especially when it's 100 degrees or whatever. Down here, it's definitely jealous of you being up there in the great state of Michigan.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. That's for sure. I think I'd like to turn this into an annual thing, you know, just to get away from the crazy heat and everything. Hey, I saw the article you wrote about Dave Jorn and the book that he's published, and we're going to talk with Dave hopefully next week, and we can schedule something out to get into this a little bit. He's got such an interesting story, and that goes to, you know, the personal aspect of it. For, you know, somebody that I think religion certainly helped change his life in very positive ways about 16 years ago. He also is a guy, you know, to be a college coach at Arkansas, then to go into minor league baseball, professional baseball. He managed, he was a pitching coach, he was successful there, and then to come back as a college coach and keep that same level of success. I find that so interesting too. And you can still see there's still some fingerprints of Dave Jorn on this baseball program here.
Well, yeah, it says a lot that when, you know, he always did a really good job in the 80s with Norm DeBryan, helped him 2 World Series, and then, you know, when Dave Van Horn comes back to Arkansas to replace Norm, he ends up, I think I got this right, I think Dave maybe called him to congratulate him on getting the job, and Dave said, hey, you know, I'd like you to be my pitching coach. I think I'm probably paraphrasing there, and maybe that's the short version, but, you know, I'm sure Dave Van Horn could have hired a whole lot of really good pitching coaches, and he decided to hire Dave Jorn. And again, they had a lot of success together. And, you know, the Daves had been together when Dave Van Horn was a GA for Norm DeBryan in the 80s. So he obviously thought so highly of Dave to bring him in. He was 16 years. That's a really long run. And they churned out a lot of really good pitchers. I think it was 2013. They led the nation in ERA, like 1.86 or something like that. And so many guys drafted and have made the major leagues. I mean, you got guys like Ryan Stanek in the big leagues now, and you know, Dallas Keuchel, who won a Cy Young, and you know, a bunch of Gold Gloves, and Dave Jorn's fingerprints are all over that program.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, I worked with Coach Jorn and obviously work with Coach Hobbs now too, as far as just trying to figure out what's going on with the pitching staff and know what all these guys are throwing and what they're working on and strategies and everything. They really come from almost opposite ends of the spectrum, at least for like the things they're known for. And I feel sometimes like people use the idea that Matt Hobbs is all analytics and that's it, and I don't agree with that at all. I think he's analytics and he's about, you know, the stuff going on in your mind and about the thinking aspects of pitching too, along with the physical aspects. You know, and Coach Jorn, I mean, if I were to think of one guy and just say old school and really mean that in the best possible way, like that's Dave Jorn to me.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. I mean, he was a pitcher himself, you know, in the 70s at Southeast Missouri State. I actually watched Dave pitch some in college because at Old Capitol Park, ballpark there, because I grew up in Cape Girardeau after I moved from Michigan and Wisconsin, then into Missouri. My folks were to Southeast Missouri State, where Dave was a really good pitcher. He was like a Division II Justin Verlander or something. He was really, really good, and he had I think 5-6 years in the Cardinals organization, got as high as AAA, and not many guys pitching as high as AAA. He didn't get to the majors, but he got as close as you can get without getting there in AAA. And he pitched for the Travelers in Little Rock, and so you know, I think he brought a lot to the table with guys as far as, being a college pitcher himself and then being a professional and kind of knowing what that takes and what obviously helped them in their careers, to get a shot to pitch professionally. But yeah, Dave, I'm not saying he didn't do scouting reports or analytics or things like that, but yeah, he's definitely old school, like you said, and I think he wanted guys who were mentally tough. But I talked to Norm DeBryan for that story, and Norm said he saw a marked change in Dave when he came back the second time. He was a really good pitching coach before, and he was still a really good pitching coach, but that he was taking more of a personal interest in guys, off the field. And like I say, not that Dave wasn't a good guy before, but I just think he'd probably tell you, it's probably in the book. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but he became a better person, which hopefully we all evolve into better people as we grow older. And but I remember I'd never heard this, or if I had, I'd forgotten it. But Norm told me that back in the '80s, the players called Dave Hard J.
I've heard that.
He's a tough guy, And that's not a bad nickname, really. I think it was probably, out of respect for how tough he could be on him. But yeah, Dave. I think Dave probably. I look forward to reading the book and like there's a launch deal party, whatever you want to call it. I think this was July 23rd. And, I was impressed. Dave Jorn has a website. You talk about learning new tricks. DaveJorn.com, and you can go to DaveJorn.com and I think you can read up on it. If you want to go to that launch party, it's at the Fowler Center that night, whatever day of the week that is, then you can RSVP. I think they're limited to 125 people because of space. But yeah, Dave Jorn's old school, but he also has a website, so that's pretty cool.
That is great, Bob. I do want to change the topic and get your opinion on something. We talked about it last segment about these reports that Greg Sankey, who's on the D1 Council, apparently wants to transition the NCAA tournament to where little guys might not be involved anymore. And when it comes to the football aspect of it, if he wants to go out and make a 32 super conference, have at it. I'm okay with it. That's the way that it's going. That's fine. But, Bob, I'm going to get really mad if Greg Sankey touches my silly little bracket. I need my silly little bracket. I need my Cinderellas. Even though it is chalky at the end, I need the St. Peter's. I need the Florida Gulf Coast of the world, the George Masons of the world, Bob. I need those. I can't have Greg Sankey messing that up.
Well, yeah, I think the popularity of the NCAA tournament, obviously, you want to have your blue bloods like Kentucky and Duke and North Carolina. Now, Arkansas is getting back in that conversation, too. But you're right. St. Peter's, I think, getting to the Elite Eight this past year was an incredible story. And you mentioned George Mason. They went to the Final Four one year. And Virginia Commonwealth's been to a Final Four. And upsets are just part of – that's why it's called March Madness, because crazy things happen, whether, conference tournaments, obviously, but then especially in the NCAA tournament. So I have a hard time believing that they would take the mid-major or even the lower major schools out of the equation, because I think that would really hurt the popularity of the tournament. I think it would hurt the ratings. That would mean less advertising dollars. That would mean less money to distribute to the schools and the conferences. So I think there's a lot of things you can criticize about the NCAA, although it always comes back to, it's the member schools. But one of the things that I think that the NCAA has done, they've done a lot of things really well. I think they run events really well, whether it's track championships, College World Series, and certainly the NCAA tournament. That's sort of the crowning jewel of the NCAA. I would say that they've made that tournament into such a great event. A lot of people have done a lot of hard work to make it that way, and so I think if you mess with the NCAA tournament formula very much, you're kind of messing with the goose that laid the golden egg.
Yeah, and Bob, I think that this may be the first piece of information that's coming out, because we've talking about football realignment. I think most people are fine with it, but it seems like everybody also at the back of their mind is concerned about how it's going to affect other sports. The Morning Rush had Bill Bender from the Sporting News on this morning, and he mentioned the fact that he's never heard so many people so concerned about the Rutgers volleyball team having to go to L.A. or the Rutgers golf team having to travel from New Jersey all the way to California, and how that's going to affect other sports. Are we seeing this kind of be maybe the first little piece of a breadcrumb trail to show that football really can change the landscape of not just college, not just football, but every sport?
Well, I mean, all these moves are predicated on football. I find it amazing or interesting in a way that, like an entity like Kansas basketball, I mean, one of the great programs in history, and they just won another national title, and nobody ever talks about, well, we got to get Kansas in our league because of basketball. It's all based on football. Obviously, Kansas basketball doesn't hurt, or Vanderbilt baseball certainly doesn't hurt Vanderbilt in the SEC. But it's all driven by football and then all that revenue. And but you do wonder about the other sports, the ones and schools like UCLA, and I know they pride themselves on water polo and field hockey, all kinds of stuff.
Beach volleyball. I don't know if Ohio State has a beach volleyball team.
Yeah. So this could probably never happen, but what would be cool is if, to me anyway, UCLA and USC want to play football with the Big Ten, make that money, be part of that TV contract, attract all those TV households out in Southern California or whatever. But then let the rest of their sports stay in the Pac-12, So But I mean that's not real life, I don't think. But you wonder about, and obviously everything's not going to be Rutgers, as far as East, Big Ten team having to go to L.A. You say, well, okay, I mean it's a long way for the UCLA and USC to come to Ohio or Michigan, but it's a long way for them to go up to Seattle and Corvallis and stuff. So they make some long trips now in their league. This won't be very much longer, But you do wonder about, because the football teams will be flying charters, and flights will be a little bit longer. Some of the kickoff times might be really early for those kids at 9 a.m. or some of the kickoff times. And you think about those East Coast, the Big Ten schools that play a night game in California and have to fly back and maybe get home at 5 a.m. or something. And the prep time, then they're playing somebody the next Saturday, and they're exhausted. But they'll only have to go out to L.A. twice a year, if that, depending on how the schedule falls. But you do wonder about all the non-revenue sports are going to have to fly commercial and make connections and probably get delayed and get their luggage lost and all that stuff, to play. You wonder about baseball. USC just hired, the coach from...
they hired Stankiewicz.
Who did such a good job. And, that's a great program historically that just has fallen on hard times for about 20 years. So, I wonder what he thinks about having to suddenly be playing baseball in the Big Ten. Of course, you might say that'd be good for USC because, the Big Ten teams are hampered. Most of them are hampered by cold weather, and maybe USC will have a big advantage. But is it really going to be fun to have to travel to play, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan State, whatever the case might be? So, the non-revenue sports, kind of get screwed in all this, but it's really all about football money at the end of the day.
Bob, we're out of time, man. Appreciate you. I'll report back from your home state in a couple of days. Thank you.
Okay, well, enjoy that Michigan weather.
Appreciate it, Bob.
Appreciate that very much, Bob. I kind of wonder, though, about if the non-revenue sports will end up having to travel any differently than football, because if you're talking about each school making over $100 million just from the television contract, I would just have a sense there's enough money for chartering flights for most of your teams, if not all of your teams. And one of the aspects of this also goes to, we haven't even gotten into yet, because this transformation committee is probably going to end up giving all of the scholarship powers back to the schools. And then you got Title IX to deal with. You may end up seeing some sports going away, and the idea of non-revenue sports might not even really be a thing in college sports, if you can imagine
Partners
that.
at BetOnline continue to be the #1 source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's Wimbledon Finals, Major League Baseball, the latest fighting news, and even next season's early NFL futures. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code BLEAV. That's BLEAV to get the bonus and get into the action. Bet online, where the game starts.